I think the biggest challenges for design in this project was keeping it as realistic as possible, and we had a high bar for the level of detail we wanted. And within that, we had a lot of constraints on, how much detail we can put into the story and still have it be a fun, fast game.
There actually is a lot more sort of current day context for everything that we do now. When we were doing things for World War II, even though that's not too distant, it is, back in the 40s, so that is a bit of a time change. So I think there felt like maybe there's a little bit more leeway with where we could go in terms of the design. There's so many current day things that we have to match and be true to these days, and there's so many people out there that are really aware of how certain weapons sounds or how vehicles sound or things like that, we needed to try even remaining more authentic than we had been in the past. We couldn't quite take as much license creatively as we could before because we wanted to remain true to that as much as possible.
We were trying to really put you in Afghanistan. So the designers knew we were going to go for that, and so they were very vigilant on what we were adding to the game. And sometimes we would add something that looked a little too perfect or looked a little too Western. A lot of times in the third world, they just don't have the resources to construct buildings the way you normally see them. Just adding that authenticity as much as we could, as much as possible. We've seen other games that have depicted Afghanistan and have been a little creative with them, with the location. And I think that was the exciting thing about this game is when we first started researching Afghanistan, I thought to myself, wow, I hadn't seen this stuff before. There's a lot of stuff here that we could really run with and make the game feel unique and not feel like just Iraq, because it's actually, it's actually a very different place.
One of the design challenges was capturing the movements of the modern day soldier, making those characters feel like they're living, breathing, modern U.S. Rangers, Tier 1 soldiers. We spent a lot of time looking at footage, trying to get those movements right. I think gameplay-wise, Afghanistan being such a different terrain, different backdrop, that we had to figure out how we get those characters to move on those different terrain, how we get them to behave the way we want them to, making it interesting. Afghanistan itself, there's not a lot going on, it's mostly mountainous areas, but making the game interesting enough to keep the player suspending that belief that he's there and making it fun at the same time.
One of the interesting design changes that we ran into during the project was in the ATV section of our game. The ATVs in Afghanistan are actually electric. You don't actually hear the motor. So we put that into the game. We try to stay as close to reality as possible, but then we realized that the regular day player didn't feel that was real. You just need to have that revving of an engine. So we decided that, sound designers, go out in the desert. We're going to do some field sounds, put some microphones on the back of ATVs, drive around, come back, let's load that into the game and see how it works. And everyone was happier with that in the end.
A lot of times when you're doing large levels and there's just so much to fill in, you start to set dress and kind of add details, almost subliminally adding them, not really thinking about what should go where. And with the designers, being so sharp as they are on this team and the art director being so great, they would look at stuff and they would say, I don't buy that. What's the story here? What happened here? And so early on, we had to realize that we couldn't just put details in like if we were doing a cartoon game or whatever. We had to tell stories with all of our props. Why was this here? What are you trying to make the player feel here? So we started to approach the art from the ground and kind of really look at what the player is seeing now, what's the player seeing now, what's the player seeing now, what's happening here, how can we make this better? We started to really create art for the action and kind of augment the action. There's a big fight here, you might die here, we got to make this area look really run down and sad, because you don't want to die here. I think there were some levels that were trickier than others because we had such grand ideas and we wanted things to happen, you know, and those things are in there. But a lot of times those things aren't in their original place, so things would get shifted around, and us as background artists, we have to react to that. So then we would just kind of, you know, react to it and make it as good as we could. And you know, usually, probably 99.9% of the time, it would end up being so much better, and we would get excited and put more work into it, and so it worked out well.